Hi.
Hey, hey, you.
Hey, you. I'm Angela Crowley here with Neuroplasticity in Action. Quite honored to have with me here today Dr. Pat Buchanan, author of Amazon's best-selling book, Relieve Your Pain.
You're
Welcome, Pat.
well. Thank you, Angela. It's so great to be here with you. And yeah, as you know, you can just call me Pat. And I'm so grateful to be here with you, Angela. We've known each other for many years, and I'm just so honored to be here with you as one of the top experts in the country and around the world in Pilates and gyrotonics, and you're an expert um, body worker and Feldenkrais teacher and just do amazing things. So I appreciate the conversation.
Thanks so much. We've been brainstorming for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
I love the way your book takes pain, expands our perspective of it, and even creates opportunities. So it leads me to ask you, what led you to write this book and create it?
Thanks for that introduction, Angela. I really appreciate your understanding of my purpose with this book. Uh, I think we both understand there is a lot of pain in the world. People are hurting in many ways, and regardless of the cause of the pain, it all shows up in the body. And so if we can do things that change how we're engaging with our body, how we become more aware of what we're doing or not doing that affects our pain, then there's many possibilities for moving past the pain and into a more loving and joyful life.
That is such a gift, just that statement, because I think we tend to think of pain as like, my knee hurts. And so there's something wrong with my knee. I need to go to the doctor or to someone to make the pain go away. Can you give me a shift on that take?
Sure. There are many times when it is helpful and beneficial to see a physician or another healthcare provider or someone else to support us when we are dealing with pain. But oftentimes, there are things that we can do that to figure out what it is that's really causing our pain and how we might change just a simple little action that we do routinely once we're aware of it to change that pain. Some pains come on rapidly, as we're both aware. I was watching a couple of basketball games over the weekend, and at least watched two women basketball players uh, get injured, one either an ankle or knee and the other a knee. And those are bam, bam, you say, oh, well, you can point to that as the cause. But oftentimes it's the daily habits we do. One example that I think of often that contributes either to our knee pain and as well as back pain is the tendency that a lot of people have, I think especially women, to stand with the knees locked out. When they lock out the knees, that changes the alignment of the skeleton. It changes the positioning of the knees. It alters the pressure that's happening on the knees when you lock them out. You're shifting that alignment and putting pressure on different parts of it. You're also tilting the pelvis, like as you know, tilting it forward, which increases the curve in the low back and often causes back pain. So when people become aware of this, and if they change that habit of standing with the knees locked out to one in which they stand with the knees softly straight, then it normalizes or balances out the pressures on the knee, and it changes the position of the pelvis and decreases that curve in the low back. And oftentimes people have their back pain just go away just from that one simple shift. And that over time, that shift in that behavior can also impact the long-term health of the knees.
So there are things that we're doing that we can alter to make a difference in our own experience. And it requires, and it requires being aware of those things, right?
Uh,
So where does awareness fit in to the picture?
I think that's one of the first steps in in relieving pain and avoiding pain, as well as leading the best lives we want to lead. You have to be aware of what's going on in your life. We have to pay attention to what we're doing and how we're doing it and what it feels like and what sensations we're picking up and what thoughts we have going on through our head and the details of the actions that we're doing. This seems like work, but it's what we had to do when we were learning growing up. And sometimes we were just so motivated and excited about learning, we didn't necessarily realize how much intention and motivation we were bringing to it. When we were young and we were first learning to walk, most of us first learning to walk, we were taking literally thousands of steps.
Hmm.
One of my colleagues literally studied how many steps babies take when they're learning to walk, and they take thousands of steps a day, and they fall down hundreds of times in the process
Practice.
of learning each day, but they get up and they go again. Seems like when we get older, we tend to forget that it takes a lot of repetitions
Mhm.
to learn some things, and if we really want to be good, it takes a lot of those repetitions and paying attention, being aware of everything we're sensing, feeling, thinking, and doing as we go through this learning process. But we can get there.
While your book does offer a lot of quick fixes, like just soften your knees, for example, or just notice, just pay attention, there are these little things that are quick fixes. And yet, by the end of the book, it's become more of a way of life, really, like more of how we approach living.
Exactly. That's what I hope people get as part of the big picture of the book, the big intention of the book. So there's plenty of people out there saying, do these, 5 things and you'll get rid of your back pain forever. And I'm like, well, 80% of the world has back pain and it typically comes back. So there's a lot to be learned. And as you know from your background in the performing arts and me with sports, people who want to be really good in their area, they practice and practice and practice. I'm sure we both know the old joke about the tourist in New York City asking the local New Yorker, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the New Yorker will say, practice, practice, practice. So, yeah, it takes a lot of repetition and a commitment, but it's a process that we can use over and over and over and
And
over again to apply to any aspect of life that we're wanting to improve.
that's wonderful to bring back that concept of learning and how it happens. And because so often in our society, we are looking for quick fixes and get frustrated very quickly if they don't happen, versus taking the time to notice and to experiment and to learn. And you're making me reflect back on being a gymnast, and you fall more times than you succeed when you're learning a trick for a long time. Yet people, when they try a new exercise for pain, if it doesn't work, it's like, well, that didn't work. Next practitioner, instead of sort of owning that it is a process
Mhm.
and that it is a learning process that requires participation, and which is a very different model than the medical systems we grew up with.
Right. And I think there's a lot more pressure on our healthcare system now to treat people's pain and their difficulties as quickly and efficiently as possible. And there are for various reasons. And there's amazing things that our healthcare system can do. There's amazing life-changing life-saving surgeries and treatments that are out there. But some of these conditions, like you were just saying, it takes a commitment to a process of change that doesn't necessarily fit in with our medical model in this country. So I think it's important for people to understand how they can take control of their healing and their recovery and partner with others who can support them in the process, and not just be someone who goes in and says, can you please fix me or give me a pill to cover up my pain. I think we both attract people who aren't willing to do that they understand that there's other greater possibilities for them than just that.
Yes, yes. And so in your book, one of the things I enjoyed is that it feels in the beginning like you're sitting next to me on the sofa, supporting
Mhm.
me every single step of the way. And as I progress through the book, I become more aware and more in tune with what I'm doing as sort of a natural effect of having gone through that process. By the end of the book, I feel empowered to be independent in terms of how I'm managing myself in relationship not only to my pain, but in terms of how I'm thinking about my pain, myself, the world around me, other people. Can you please give some examples of how you tangibly do that in your book?
Well, thank you for conveying that I was successful in my intention. I really did want it to feel like a personal uh, uh, encounter. You know, I've set aside my academic career where I would not be writing so informally and so conversationally as I am in this book, but I also been using that academic those credentials on all that information I've acquired over the years to create that setting as if you and I were sitting next to one another in the same room, having a conversation, and me being your guide on the side, just helping to evoke from you your ability to tap into your embodied wisdom and become aware of all the possibilities that are within you. Just need a little direction to know where to look, where to find it, how to explore and figure it out, and to identify what's the best approach for you, for the reader, at that point in time, given where that person is at with the resources they have available to them at that time. There's no one fits everybody
Right.
approach in this book. There's no protocol. I guide people through, I call them awareness explorations. I draw on my work, my training, my experiences as an athletic trainer and physical therapist, and as someone who studied the teachings of Moshe Feldenkrais, and person I've studied dynamic systems and human performance and development of behavior, and pulled those together and combined them with an awareness of just all the forces that come together to support us to be the best that we can be, particularly when we're willing and we're motivated and we're open to learning more. So it's exactly the intention I had in mind, Angela, to empower the person to recognize their own ability to learn and expand the possibilities uh, for their lives, and to have a process that they can apply in many situations and go deeper and deeper and apply in different areas of their lives.
You happened to mention behavior as you were talking. And when I see someone come in pain, it's not only in how they're managing that part, right? But it's in their whole being. I see it in their face. I see it the way they're managing themselves. Often their temperament has been affected. And can you speak to that about how it really takes over the whole of us and what that can do in terms of chronic pain also?
Yeah, it's one of the I think it's one of the if you will the top of mind, if you will, examples of how everything is related when we're in pain. I mean, you know, I have great respect and admiration for people who deal with chronic pain. I fortunately, at least so far, have not had that situation. I have had my bouts of pain, but I know it affects, you know, affects our self-image. It literally will alter the way that our neurons are firing throughout our body. It'll change the patterning of the way we're making sense, we're coordinating those the interactions among the neurons in our brain as they communicate with the different areas of our body. There's a lot of stimulation that's altered between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, the sympathetic aspect of our nervous system being the part that, if you will, riles us up to be ready to, if we need to fight or flee or freeze, to maintain our safety, our literal safety. And that affects our emotional state. You know, I think it's why, you know, I know it's true for me when I'm in pain, whether it's a mental, a physical or an emotional pain. I know my tendency is to get really defensive and angry, and I'm ready. I tend to be one who's ready to fight, and I don't really mean it. It's just what has been my habitual response with my sympathetic nervous system. But I also know there are ways to engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our, let's pause, let's reset, let's rest, let's regenerate, and from that state create all, you know, more effective ways of dealing with this. But all of those will influence our emotional state, our actions, it's our ability to tense up and carry a lot of unnecessary tension, which tends to exacerbate pain. So as we become aware of what we're using, the 4 words I know you're familiar with, what we're sensing, what we're feeling, what we're thinking about, what we're doing, how we're actually doing things, it's all related. And we can approach these aspects from different perspectives. You know, we can use our breathing. We can be aware of whether or not we're holding tension in our shoulders. And if we are, oh, can I just let it go? Can I alter my breathing? Can I stand a little differently? Am I always standing with my weight on one leg more than the other? It's all kinds of things we can notice, and small changes, small steps we can take to alter what we're doing and bring down the pain and bring up the well-being.
You mentioned thinking. Can you speak to the power of thought in terms of it often, when we are suffering with pain, becomes somewhat of a broken record. My back hurts, my back hurts, my back hurts, not only in ourselves, not only what we're saying to ourselves, what we're saying to others, and then that becomes what we create in our world too.
Yeah, so, you know, our thinking patterns, our movement patterns, our sensations, they're all wrapped up together. I give a couple of examples uh, in my book of the way they just kind of show up posturally. You know, if I'm thinking, Oh God, I really hurt. I'm so tired of hurting. Oh man, it just, you see how I'm shifting
Yeah,
my
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
posture, slouching, my head's down, my
Probably
shoulders,
harder to breathe
it's
like that,
harder to breathe. Yeah.
harder
And if
to digest like that.
right. And if I can just, okay, I notice it. I notice it. Okay. Well, what's one thing I can do now, given the circumstances I'm in? What's one thing I can do now after I've noticed that? Well, I can, all right, I'm slouching. Maybe I can bring my shoulders back, look up, my chest expands. I'm able to expand my chest better. I can breathe better. That's going to affect my sympathetic nervous system. Uh, and I just feel sitting upright just seems to come along with it. I just feel better about myself.
And
So even
I
just a,
can't help but notice as you made that shift, how your eyes began looking around at the world around you, how the potential of the world around you becomes part of your life again. Whereas when we're focused and narrowed by the pain we're in, it so grossly affects our potential and our perception of the world.
great observation, Angela. Yeah, it's like we're zoomed in and focused in, and we often need reminders to look up and expand our perspective and realize there's so much more
And if you
than
look up and expand your perspective and notice that it happens to be a beautiful day and
Mhm.
there happens to be a beautiful tree that you're seeing, how do those pleasurable sensations then start to affect the whole story?
Yeah, I think, notice what I did right there. I think doing that provides some useful comparison and contrast. And I don't mean the comparison and contrast that we do that gets us into traps when we're comparing ourselves to other people. Um, but the comparison and the contrast of like, oh, when I was like this, I hurt more. I was really thinking about how I'm never going to get out of this pain. But when I looked up and I see, I can look out my window and see the tree across the street is starting to leaf out, and like, oh, spring is on the way here, and
It's a potential.
the new growth is happening, and I can shift out of this, even if it's just a little bit. I can make that shift, but it's those little shifts over and over and over again that accumulate, that create the change, and that will lead us away from our pain and toward our pleasure over time and
With
alter.
your scientific background, can you explain how that actually happens in the brain?
Well, what we know so far, and I'll just say one of the things I learned in the process of getting my PhD was that I've really learned the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. But we have a growing understanding of how the organization of our nervous system is actually connected with everything we do with our entire being, and it's altered by what we do and what we don't do. So when we change our behavior, especially when we do it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and we start developing a new, if you will, habit or pattern or paradigm of behaving, of acting, um, that builds up over time. And so the same processes, as one of my dear teachers, Esther Thielen, used this language. She said the same processes that create the behaviors we want are the same processes that create the behaviors we don't want. And it's the same process of change. So our actions, the things we're doing, the things we're sensing, the feelings we're having, the thoughts we're having are all impacting how the brain works and how we make the connections among those millions of neurons and the patterns of behavior that emerge from that. But just as they change in response to the unwanted things that happen to us, they change in response to the desirable things. So when we put what we put our attention on
Is
is
what
what
grows.
is what grows. Yeah. So it goes along with, I talk about 3 A's, 3 skills of A's that we need to really focus on and develop to be successful with our lives. One is that awareness, notice what we're noticing. The other is attention. That, we can notice what we're paying attention to. Am I paying attention to my pain, or am I paying attention to all those areas that aren't hurting? More areas aren't hurting for most of us than are hurting. And am I working on becoming adaptable, giving myself more than one way of doing things, not just being stuck with a compulsory behavior?
Yeah. When I think of what's going on in the brain with pain, I think of it as being somewhat of like a fire alarm going off. And it's like the more we pay attention to it, it's like walking closer to that loud sound, right? And it
Mm.
taking over more.
Mhm.
And I think of the sensations of pleasure drawing the brain's attention in another direction, which then helps to soften the noise, if you will.
Mm.
So, for example, if I'm working on a person with pain, it's unlikely I'm going to go there first, because
Right.
it's sort of like lighting up, saying, yes, this is a problem, right? Versus bringing their attention, maybe if it's neck pain, maybe down to their feet, far away,
Yeah.
almost like whispering to the person when the pain has been yelling at them, right?
Yeah.
Whispering with them and sensations that start to call their attention in a different direction. And then that pleasurable cortical real estate gets to start to grow. And the
Yeah.
more that part grows, the more the other part gets to reduce. And the more we have, as you said, a contrast of perspective that then begins to help us make that shift.
Yeah, and we've learned, and it's taken us a while to figure it out. It took a long time. There were people that were uh, proposing this ahead of science's ability to prove it, if you will. We've both studied with Moshe Feldenkrais, and there are other people like Paul Baccarita, uh,
Mm.
who who posed back in the 60s that the brain changes in response to the actions, the activities that we do. So we can selectively use our activities to guide that those connections and those literal mappings, if you will, of the brain. And it wasn't until the early 90s until the technology became good enough that they can have small enough needles to poke small enough groups of cells in those monkeys that let people poke their brains and map out the changes that happen when they learn new behaviors, and can confirm when you learn things with the left hand that you didn't do before, it changes the mapping, expands the mapping, the territory in the brain that's dedicated to that. If you don't use that, you lose it. Use it or lose it. And it's true with people who for various reasons don't have access to one of the sensory modalities, that their vision or their hearing. That area of the brain becomes less dedicated to those senses, and the other areas expand to help, if you will, I don't want to say
Great
compensate, but
example.
adapt
Yeah, yeah,
adapt and take
yeah,
on a greater role
yeah.
to allow the person to make the best use of the resources available to them.
And I think that's a great image too for what happens in the body for us as movement practitioners, and that we think our walking or our lives are limited perhaps because of a hurt knee, but there's so many other parts of ourselves that can help us mobilize, right?
You're right.
And by learning to use the weight of our head, the freedom of our trunk, the movement of our hips, the flexibility of our feet, by increasing the options that we have to mobilize ourselves, then suddenly that knee that was taking over our lives is suddenly a small part of the whole.
Yeah. There's a lot of embodied truth to the cliche that many hands make light work.
I love that.
Yeah, so the more parts of ourselves that we're engaging, involving in our actions, then the less demand we're putting on any one area. And if there is a weak area, by inviting those areas that are in better condition to do a little bit more and relieve the burden on the area that's weak, there's just possibilities open up that we weren't aware of until we got some guidance to like, oh yeah, and probably I think you would agree, you see a lot of people holding a lot of tension in their chest and rib area, the thoracic area. It's fascinating how we tend to dampen
Are
that
there? Yeah.
down. And I think a lot of it has to do about the way we uh, our society makes us eh, well, kind of wants to shift, uh, causes us to think of ourselves in certain ways, that conditioning that the culture has on us, or
Mhm.
guys are supposed to act a certain way and women are supposed to act a certain way, or you've had a lot of emotional
Mhm.
challenges in your life, and you're feeling really you need to feel like you really need to armor yourself, and there's a lot going on throughout our lives that's contributing to how physical pain
Yeah.
that shows up. It's
Yeah.
not just the physical injuries. It's all aspects of our life are contributing, and we can make shifts through our movement that will impact all areas of life.
That's right. Like becoming more flexible in the guarded rib cage. I mean, those rib cages are designed to protect our organs, right?
Right.
Yet the amount of movement that's possible in those ribs in so many directions is one of our greatest gifts of flexibility and mobility, and a gift for breathing as well. And it's natural that as we start to enjoy that sense of freedom and softness, that it seeps into the rest of ourselves, yeah?
Yeah, it's
So
all
that
related.
it begins to be expressed then in our personalities as well, in our sense of possibilities as well.
Yeah.
One of the things in your book that I think is a real treasure is that the reward is not just getting out of pain. The reward is living a fully more enjoyable life. And I feel like it even has a spiritual feeling to it. Like what where you're hoping to call people to from pain to a sense of joy and possibility. And you even say love.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that is woven in there. I I've been through quite a journey myself, or journeys. In particular, during the time I was writing this book, I first started it, I think, in 2015 or 16. And then really after that start, it just kind of sat. I was going through, if you will, a dark night of the soul. And, I been exposed to various spiritual traditions much of my life, and was getting more into some meditative practices. And
Mm.
um, as I worked through and reconnected with another spiritual community that's very precious to me, uh, I just have seen more clearly that it's all related. And whether the language people want to use around this can vary. For me, that's not the important part. The important part is, as you say, to look when we look up and notice the blue sky, or notice the tree leafing out, and it's like, how in the world does that happen? How in the world does it happen that we woke up this morning and our hearts are beating and we're breathing, and we're not doing really, I mean, we do things that can modify that, but something is going on that's has us living, you know? And that sense of whatever that creative energy is, you can think of it as quantum energy, you can think of it as the spirit of life, you can, whatever term you want to put on it. But there's so many possibilities in that realm. And there's so much support that comes, but like I said, I'll tell you a little bit about how patterns form in our brains and the interactions among our nervous systems. And we know now how much information comes from the body. It's not just the brain that's in charge. The brain was just one piece of the whole that we call ourselves, our bodies. And but there's so many other factors, so many other influences that are happening in our lives. And as we become more aware of these, we see what's possible, and we understand how much more is possible as we become more aware and open to recognizing, well, I might not know how to do this now, but I can imagine myself 6 months from now, a year, 2 years from now, I'm living my best life, the life I really dream about living. And I know that's possible. And I can see it, I can feel it, I can sense it, I can imagine it clearly. You and I use this imagination in our work every day. We can use it on a grander scale as well. And we don't have to know how to get there. We just have to be open and know, okay, what can I do today? Given the resources available to me, given my status right now, what's an action, what's a step that I can take today? If I keep taking those steps, it's going to lead me to this imagined dream that I have of living a healthier, more active, more fulfilling life that's more joyful and full of love. And there's just too much pain and downright hate in the world right now. I just all about hurting less and loving more.
Well said, thank you.
No, thanks for asking. And regardless of the spiritual tradition, I think that's the message that's supposed to come through is
Yeah,
love,
yeah, yeah,
more
yeah,
love.
yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right. Um, it comes down to what really matters in terms of life and what we want out of life. And so thank you for creating this book and offering us ways to find our way out of pain and into fulfillment and into possibilities and into imagining the future and growing into it.
Thanks so much, Angela. Such a pleasure, always.